They say blood is thicker than water, but they never tell you what to do when it's your own blood who drains you dry, who leaves you bleeding and still expects you to love them. My name is Camille, and for most of my life, I believed my sister Leah was my other half. My better half, even. We were born 23 months apart, but inseparable from the moment she took her first breath. Our mother used to dress us in matching clothes, tie our hair in the same pigtails, and say, "Two girls, one soul." We shared everything: bedroom walls, teenage secrets, first heartbreaks. We even had a jar where we'd save coins for a sister's trip to Paris we dreamed about since we were kids. I truly thought she was my forever person, the one who would never let me down. I was wrong. Looking back now, the signs were there, hiding in plain sight. But love has a way of softening the edges of truth. It blinds you to the slow, silent bruising someone can cause when their smile doesn't reach their eyes. Leah had always been the more vibrant one, the one people noticed first, the louder laugh, the bolder presence. If I was the moon, she was the sun, brilliant, blinding, impossible to look away from. But even the sun cast shadows. I just didn't know I was standing in one. Things changed the day Adam proposed. It was late September, leaves crunching under our boots, a crisp breeze in the air. Adam took me on a hike through Maple Ridge, the same trail we walked on our first date. At the summit, with the valley stretched beneath us like a watercolor painting, he knelt down and held up a ring. I couldn't speak. I nodded through tears, laughing and crying all at once. When we got back home, I called Leah immediately. She raced over, eyes wide, arms flung around me in a tight embrace. "Oh my God, you're engaged." "I can't believe it," she squealed. But something was off. There was a flicker, just for a second, when she looked at the ring. Not awe. Not excitement. Something else. Something colder. Then she caught herself, laughed, and said, "You deserve this, Cam." Really? I believed her. Because that's what you do when it's your sister. You believe them, even when your gut tells you not to. At first, it felt harmless. Leah wanted to help with the wedding. She offered to take over the venue tours, met with the florist when I couldn't get off work, even volunteered to plan the bridal shower. I was touched, grateful, even. She had always been good at organizing things. She had an eye for aesthetics, a way of making things picture perfect. "Let me take the pressure off you," she said with a soft smile. "You should be enjoying this." And I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? She became a permanent fixture in our lives. Adam seemed amused by her energy, often chuckling when she made sarcastic jabs or playfully teased him. "She's just excited for you," he told me one night as we curled up on the couch. "You're her big sister. Of course, she wants to be part of it." But it wasn't just excitement. Not anymore. There were moments, fleeting, but real, when I'd catch them exchanging glances. Not the kind you share with your soon-to-be sister-in-law. These were different. Lingering. Loaded. Once, I walked into the living room, and they were sitting close, too close, laughing at something on his phone. They jumped apart when I entered, like children caught in a lie they didn't know how to explain. Another time, I found Leah's scarf on our bathroom counter. She hadn't stayed over. She hadn't even mentioned stopping by that day. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off with a laugh. "I probably left it last week," she said. "You know how scatterbrained I am." I didn't push. I didn't want to believe my sister would cross a line that sacred. That devastating. But the worst came one evening when Adam left his phone on the kitchen island. It buzzed once, then twice. I glanced. It was a message from Leah. "Miss you already. That thing you said last night. I can't stop thinking about it." My chest tightened. I told myself there had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe it was about something else. Maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe. But deep down, I knew. I confronted him that night. He looked startled at first, then annoyed. Like I was being unreasonable. "You're overreacting," he said. She confides in me, that's all. She feels like she can talk to me about stuff." "About what?" I asked, my voice cracking. "About you? About us?" He didn't answer. That silence was louder than any confession. Still, I held on. I told myself we could fix it, that it hadn't gone too far. Until the night I came home early from a business trip. I had a bad feeling the moment I stepped off the train. Something in the pit of my stomach felt wrong. I didn't call or text ahead. I just wanted to be home. The apartment was dimly lit, candles flickering in the living room. Soft jazz played through the speakers. And there they were. Adam. Shirtless.
Leah.
Wrapped in the robe I'd left on the back of the bathroom door. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't scream. Couldn't cry. I just stood there, frozen in the doorway, watching my world fracture into 1,000 jagged pieces. They saw me, and neither of them moved. Adam didn't even pretend to be ashamed. Leah pulled the robe tighter around herself, her eyes glassy with tears. It wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. I wanted to laugh, scream, collapse. Instead, I turned around and walked out the door. Because in that moment, I knew something deeper than heartbreak. I knew betrayal. The kind you never forget. The kind that doesn't just hurt, it redefines everything you thought you knew. Ever been in such a betrayal and heartbreaking situation? Drop your comment below and stick through to the end of this video. You think you know what pain feels like until it visits you in silence. Not the dramatic, screaming kind of pain you see in movies. The real kind. The kind that sits with you in the dark, wraps around your chest, and whispers that nothing will ever be the same again. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't yell or call anyone. I drove. Nowhere really. Just away. I remember staring out at the highway lights as they blurred into streaks. My phone buzzed, Leah. Then Adam. I threw it into the glove box and kept driving. By morning, I was sitting in a cheap motel room off the interstate, the kind with scratchy sheets and a coffee machine that coughed out brown water. That's where the grief hit me, like a tidal wave that had been holding its breath. I sobbed until my lungs hurt, until I couldn't see straight. I wasn't just mourning the end of an engagement. I was mourning a life I thought I had, a future I thought I was building, a sister I thought would always be on my side. When I finally returned to the apartment 2 days later, Adam was gone. So were most of his things. He left a note. I didn't read it. I packed whatever I could fit into 2 suitcases and called a moving service for the rest. I couldn't stay there. The walls knew too much. The worst part? The silence that followed. Friends who had once toasted champagne with us didn't know what to say. Some quietly unfriended me on social media. Others sent awkward messages like, I hope you're okay. I heard something weird. Is it true? I deleted them all. My parents were devastated. But even in their sadness, I felt a weight of disappointment. It's horrible, my mother said. But you can't throw away your family over a man. A man? That wasn't just any man. That was my fiancé. My future. And it wasn't just about him. It was about Leah. But my mother didn't understand. Maybe she couldn't. Or maybe she didn't want to choose between her daughters. So I made the choice for her. I stopped coming to Sunday dinners. I skipped birthdays. I didn't return calls. I put space between me and the pain, thinking distance would somehow become healing. I moved 3 towns over, far enough that no one recognized me at the grocery store. I rented a studio apartment above a bakery. The smell of fresh bread each morning was the closest thing to comfort I had. I got a dog, Milo. A rescue mutt with uneven ears and eyes too wise for his age. He became my therapy, my anchor, my only real reason to wake up on some days. Work became my escape. I threw myself into projects, took on double shifts, said yes to every overtime request. I didn't want time to think, because when I did, I'd see her face, hear his voice, feel everything I'd lost, all over again. People say time heals everything, but they forget to mention the in-between. The weeks where you wake up angry, the months where laughter feels foreign, the nights where you stare at the ceiling, wondering how someone who once loved you could destroy you so completely. I was broken, and I didn't even know what healing looked like yet. But that was about to change. Grief doesn't end. It just changes shape. For a long time, mine took the form of avoidance. avoiding memories, avoiding my family, avoiding her. Every text from Leah went unopened. Every call from my mother felt like a landmine, tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. Or rather, the sister in the room. Eventually, even those calls stopped coming. People gave me space. Too much of it. It's funny how loneliness can feel like both a punishment and a shield. In those early months, I went numb. I'd wake up, feed Milo, go to work, come home, microwave something tasteless, and fall asleep to the static of late-night television. It wasn't living, it was just surviving. But slowly, without even realizing it, little cracks of light began to slip through. There was a coworker, Angie, who always brought an extra cup of coffee just in case I needed one. A neighbor who slipped cookies through my mail slot around Christmas. A teenage girl at the dog park who said, "I like your vibe. You seem kind of sad, but like strong." I smiled. Not fake, not forced. A real smile. It was the first in months. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. At first, it was just lists. Things I hated. People I missed. Memories that hurt. Then it became deeper. Letters I'd never send. Thoughts I was afraid to say out loud. I went to therapy. Not because I believed in it, but because I was out of excuses. And, to my surprise, it helped. A lot. My therapist once asked, "What would you say to your younger self the day you lost everything?" I paused, then whispered, "I'm sorry you thought that love had to be earned." That answer stayed with me. See, Leah didn't just betray me. She exposed every insecurity I had spent years burying. That I wasn't enough. That if I didn't keep everyone happy, I'd lose them. That love was conditional. But healing isn't linear. It's messy. Some days I was okay. Others, I cried on my bathroom floor while Milo licked my face, and I told myself it was just allergies. Years passed. 3 birthdays. 2 promotions. One almost relationship that ended when he said I kept too many walls up. I wanted to believe I was over it. Over her. Over him. But the truth was I was just good at pretending. Until the phone call that cracked everything open again. The phone call came late at night. My mother had passed. It was sudden, too sudden. A stroke in her sleep, one of those silent killers that leave no room for goodbyes. They say people are never truly gone until the last person who remembers them fades away, but I felt the weight of her absence the moment I hung up the phone. The world became colder. Mom had been my anchor. The one person who always knew how to calm me, how to comfort me when the world felt too heavy. I didn't know how to exist without her. The funeral was a blur of grief and formalities. I didn't recognize half the people who showed up, and the ones I did recognize felt like strangers. The house was full of murmurs, forced smiles, and empty condolences. But it wasn't the crowd I dreaded the most. It was seeing her again. Leah. I didn't know how I felt about that. Was it fear? Anger? A mixture of both? But there she was, standing by the altar, not with the nervousness I expected, but with a confidence that she had somehow claimed a space that I'd never been able to take back. She had a life I could never picture for myself. A husband. A child growing inside her. The same man who had stolen my future. And then I saw the pearls. They were Mom's. Pearls she had promised me on my wedding day, a symbol of her love and protection. But now, they draped around Leah's neck like a twisted reminder of all the things I'd lost. She caught my eye. The briefest flicker of recognition passed between us, and something unspoken hung in the air. I didn't smile. Neither did she. I went through the motions. The eulogies. The hymns. The long hours spent in a room full of people who meant well, but didn't truly understand. I couldn't leave fast enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. The grief, combined with the unresolved tension between Leah and me, made it impossible to find peace. I drove to the family house. It wasn't easy. Every inch of the house screamed of memories, some good, most bad. But I had things to collect. My childhood toys. A few mementos of better days. My mother's journal, the one I was never supposed to find, hidden in her bedside drawer. When I arrived, the house was quiet, too quiet. I stood by the door for a moment, wondering if I should just turn around and leave. But I needed answers. Answers I wasn't sure I was ready for. That's when I heard the voices. Leah's voice. Her husband's. They were arguing, their words rising in anger, then dissolving into something softer, sobs. I froze. I knew I should leave. I should walk away. But something inside me couldn't. I crept closer to the living room, hiding behind the hallway wall. I could barely make out the words, but I heard enough. Leah was crying, her voice shaky and desperate. I never wanted this. It's all falling apart and I don't know how to fix it. I don't even know who I am anymore. Her words were barely above a whisper. Her husband's voice came next, the one who had been the center of my broken dreams. You only wanted Adam because Camille had him, he said, his voice cold. You thought you'd take everything she had, and it would fix your life. There it was. The truth I had been avoiding. The truth that made the betrayal sting even more, because it wasn't just about Adam. It wasn't even about the man. It was about Leah's fear. Her insecurity. The same toxic jealousy I had seen for years. She had always wanted what I had. Not because she loved it, but because she couldn't stand the idea of me having something she didn't. I leaned back, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. There it was. The lie I had lived with for years, the lie I had blamed myself for. Leah didn't love Adam. She had never loved him. She loved the idea of taking everything from me. That was her way of controlling her pain. And I had been too hurt to see it for what it was. I didn't confront her that night. But the next morning she came to find me. We stood in the backyard of the house, where we had spent hours as children, running barefoot through the grass, playing games, making promises that we thought would last forever. Now, everything felt hollow. She was different. Older. Heavier. I was different too. I wasn't the girl who believed in unconditional love anymore. But I still wanted to believe in something. I was jealous, she said quietly. Always. You had everything. Everyone loved you. I felt invisible. I thought taking him, taking what you had, would make me feel better. But it didn't. It just broke me more. I didn't speak. Not yet. I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued, her voice breaking. But I needed to say it. I needed to tell you the truth before it destroys everything. I still didn't know what to say. My chest tightened, and for the first time, I didn't see the sister who betrayed me. I saw the broken little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the girl who used to tell me everything. The girl who had been my best friend. I'm sorry, she whispered, her tears soaking into the fabric of her blouse. I'm sorry I hurt you. I don't know how to make it right, but I'm trying. And in that moment, something shifted. Forgiveness didn't feel like something I could do. Not yet. But I understood. For the first time, I saw her not as the enemy, but as someone who had been hurting in ways I couldn't even imagine. I wasn't ready to embrace her, but I was ready to listen. The hardest part of forgiveness is understanding that it's not about forgetting. You can forgive someone without erasing the pain they caused, without pretending it never happened. And that was the truth I had to confront. Forgiveness wasn't about letting Leah off the hook. It was about letting go of the weight that had been holding me back. For months, I battled with myself. Could I forgive her? Was it even possible? I knew I had to. For my own peace. For my own sanity. But every time I thought about it, the memories flooded back. The betrayal, the hurt, the overwhelming sense of loss. Adam's face. My wedding dress hanging in the closet. A ghost of what could have been. Leah's smile when she told me she was in love with him, and how she had stolen my future without a second thought. I couldn't just erase that. I couldn't pretend it didn't matter. But somewhere deep inside, I knew that holding on to that hurt was only going to eat away at me. It had been eating at me for so long, and I couldn't let it control my life anymore. I started seeing a therapist. At first, I didn't want to. I thought it was a sign of weakness. But I was wrong. Therapy helped me untangle the web of emotions that had kept me stuck for so long. It taught me that I didn't have to forget, but I could choose to heal. That letting go didn't mean excusing the past. It meant freeing myself from the chains it had placed on my heart. One night, I sat down in front of my mother's old desk, the one she had used to write letters and keep her thoughts organized. I opened a drawer and found her journal. I had never read it before. It was a secret I had never known she kept. But now I needed it. The first entry I opened was a letter she had written to me, long before she passed. I hadn't realized she had written it, but it was meant for me. Camille, it began, love your sister when it's hard. That's when it matters most. It's not about being perfect or never making mistakes. It's about understanding that we are all human and we all fall short. Sometimes, the hardest people to love are the ones closest to us. But in loving them, we learn to love ourselves. The tears came without warning. I hadn't realized how much I had needed to hear those words. She had known. She had understood the depth of the pain, and yet she had still believed in the power of love and forgiveness. I sat there for hours, letting her words sink in. I was angry. I was hurt. But I also knew that I had a choice. I didn't have to carry this burden with me forever. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But eventually I made a decision. I would write to Leah. Not to absolve her, not to say everything was okay, but to tell her how I felt. To express the pain, the anger, the loss. But also the hope. The hope that maybe, just maybe, we could start healing. I wrote the letter in one sitting. 10 pages. It poured out of me in a way I hadn't expected. I told her everything. How much she had hurt me. How long I had hated her. How much I had missed her. The things I never said because I thought they were too painful to admit. I even told her I still loved her, but that it would take time. That forgiveness wouldn't come easily, but it was possible. I had no intention of sending it. I just needed to write it, to release all of the emotions that had been bottled up for so long. But then I thought about it again. I thought about the words my mother had written, about how love and forgiveness were the keys to healing. I left the letter on Leah's doorstep, wrapped with a ribbon. No name, just a gesture. A step forward, even if it wasn't a giant leap. The next morning, I heard the knock on my door. It was Leah. She stood there, her face pale, eyes red from crying. I read your letter, she said softly. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what I was thinking. I was selfish. I was broken and I thought taking everything you had would fix it. But it didn't. It just made everything worse. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. I stood there, frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. But then I let myself relax, just a little. I let myself feel her warmth, her sorrow, and the remnants of the sister I used to love. We talked for hours. There was no grand reconciliation, no magic moment where everything was suddenly perfect. But we did talk. We said the things we had never said before. The silence between us started to fade, bit by bit. It was painful, but it was necessary. Forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. It doesn't mean that all the scars magically disappear. But it does mean that the pain doesn't control you anymore. It means choosing peace over resentment, healing over bitterness. And that's what I chose. Leah and I are still sisters. We talk sometimes. We've started to rebuild the fragile threads of our relationship. But I'm no longer living in the shadow of the past. I'm living for myself now. I've rebuilt my life. New city, new career, new relationships. And though things will never be the same, I've found peace. I've found strength in my own forgiveness. I've learned that I can't change the past, but I can shape my future. I don't know if Leah and I will ever be as close as we once were. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. But I've made peace with it. Because forgiveness isn't about pretending everything is okay. It's about giving yourself the freedom to move forward. I've taken back my life, and I'm stronger for it. Every time I look in the mirror now, I see someone who survived. Someone who chose grace over anger. Someone who found the courage to forgive, even when it was the hardest thing to do. As I reflect on everything I've been through, betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately forgiveness, I've learned that sometimes the hardest person to forgive is the one closest to us. But true healing begins when we choose to let go of the past, not for them, but for ourselves. If you've ever struggled with a relationship that seemed beyond repair, or faced a betrayal you never saw coming, I want you to know you're not alone. The journey toward healing is long, but it's also one of the most powerful steps you can take to reclaim your life. Forgiveness doesn't erase the pain, but it frees you from its grip. And with every choice you make to heal, you make room for peace, for hope, and for a future that's truly yours. If you found comfort or strength in this story, I encourage you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you've experienced something similar, I'd love to hear your story. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How did you find peace after betrayal? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more emotional, real-life stories that bring healing and hope. I'm grateful you joined me today, and I hope you leave with a reminder that no matter what you've been through, there is always room for redemption, love, and the power to forgive. Thank you for listening. Remember, your story matters, and your journey is worth every step.